We spoke with Mick Guerin last week on Trots TV. Thought we'd get him back. There's a big Kiwi representation this weekend at Tabcorp Park, Menangle. Hello to you, Mick.
Yeah, g'day, Hazy, and a big hi to everybody watching Trots TV. Pretty darn excited about not only the barrier draw for the Inter-Dominion, but these Derby and Oaks heats this week. Even a couple of ex-Kiwis and the Rod Fitzpatrick and the Pink Bonnet. So a very big Kiwi flavour to the lead-up to the big day.
Let's start with the New South Wales Derby heats. And Mark Purdon takes one 3-year-old star home in Follow the Stars and sends across another Kiwi in Hug the Wind. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, very good horse, professional horse, placed in both the Sales Series and the Sire Stakes in New Zealand. Hasn't raced since December 31, but did trial last week at Ashburton in very good style. He's a natural horse who will get off the gate hard. He probably won't lead, but Mark, I spoke to this week, very confident he can sit off the speed and win. I would say he's more suited to the mobile 2,400 metres than most of his Australian rivals. Deserved favourite, and to be honest, Hazy, he deserves to be favourite for the Derby final. I think the TAB got their market wrong here. I know Art Union has been in Australia for longer, but Hug the Wind is a better horse than Art Union.
In that first Derby heat, what about Slugham, the former Kiwi? He's now with Brent Lilly. He's had the one run in Australia and was an impressive winner on that occasion, sat up outside them and controlled the race. What's his reputation like in New Zealand?
He's a former stablemate of Hug the Wind, and you would place him between 2 and 3 lengths behind Hug the Wind. So, very nice horse. It will be super competitive in further Derby races later in the season, but I'm just not thinking he's up to these horses just yet. He'll probably qualify for the Derby, one would think, but that might be the best he can hope for. He would rank as clearly third of the Kiwis, ex-Kiwis in this Derby series, behind, in order, Hug the Wind and then Art Union.
What about in the second of the New South Wales Derby heats? We've got Myfield Marshall and Art Union going around. We've seen a bit of them here in Australia. What are your thoughts on those two horses?
Well, Art Union is a natural for Australian racing. Gets off the gate hard. We saw him punch through from the second line to lead and then beat Follow the Stars in a Victorian Derby heat, then locked Sulky Stays in the final. So to give him that, he's thrived in Sydney for Crandell Getty, so I'm very happy with him. He deserves to be favourite. And we saw in the Simpson Memorial, the win of Myfield Marshall was very strong. I thought he was outstanding there, but disappointing. In Victoria, I believe he had a slight issue there. He'll be better this week, but I still think Art Union's the better of the two hopes quite clearly. He's a horse who looks very hard to beat in the final because he does have extremely high gate speed and has paced 2:55 for 2,400 metres at Ashburton in New Zealand. That's pretty quick on a very similar track to Menangle.
Just before we go into the Oaks heats, what about the Brian Hancock Cup? That's the free-for-all on Saturday night. We see, the Kiwis have all drawn well. Pemberton Shard's come up with Barrier 1, Adorme's in 2 and Isaiah in 3. What's Mark Purdon expecting from his two runners on Saturday night?
He expects Isaiah to need the run. Isaiah's a fat little horse who tends to take a lot of racing, so I'm not thinking he's going to be a huge challenger. The question mark for Adore Me is, can she hold the flyers at the start? The horse is drawn 5, 6 and 7 all get off the gate really hard. I think she'll struggle to hold them. The question then becomes, will they re-hand the lead to her? Look, she's in great form. She's parked in a 151.6 mile at Cambridge, which is probably a second slower than Menangle about a month ago. She'll probably still win this race, Hazy, but I wouldn't be taking the $1.35, $1.40 because it's extremely doubtful she can hold those New South Wales and Queensland horses at the start.
Our Sky Major will go around in the Paleface Adios. He's come up with barrier number 1 and he looks like he's set to qualify for the Chariots of Fire.
Yeah, wonderful Australian form dating back to his 2-year-old days in last season, second in the Victoria Derby. Unlucky with barrier draws in the Breeders' Crown so far in his career. He developed really high gate speed last year, super gate speed actually, so he's perfect for Menangle. Very good staying horse. He's won a harness jewels over a mile at Ashburton under similar circumstances. I expect Zach Butcher to try and lead with him because there's not a horse in the race you would suggest he could hand up to and be guaranteed qualifying for the Chariots of Fire. Probably a little bit short. I think there's a quotes between $1.40, $1.50 floating around. I think he deserves to be longer than that. You'll see a miss in his form last start. That was in a standing start race where he missed away badly. So forgive him that. Before that, ran on extremely well for fourth behind Hoka Punter and Gold Ace at Alexandra Park. So Class Act gets the barrier draw to dominate. I would say, though, he's probably still on an improvement curve fitness-wise because he did miss that run last week at galloping away at Alexandra Park. My real odds for him, even money. That's my line in the sand for our Sky Major in the Pale Base Adios.
You mentioned the Kiwis, or the former Kiwis, going around in the Rod Fitzpatrick and also the Pink Bonnet. Philly, I wanted to ask you about Alabama Shakes. Now, Shane Tritton went across to New Zealand. It had a couple of trials, I believe, in New Zealand. Shane paid good money for it. And it's come out the other day in the heat of the Pink Bonnet, and it has run an equal Australasian record for a 2-year-old filly. Big, big effort, and Shane Tritton has a very good opinion of it.
Yeah, it comes from a guy called Tony Stratford in New Zealand who trains them well. Remarkably, the only trial Shane Tritton had seen of the horse was on the grass. The horse actually trialled on the grass at a track where they race once a year called Cromwell and win a 1:57.5 mile, but there's every chance, Hazy, that was time with the egg timer. So the job's been done, though. The horse purchased and looks a really natural 2-year-old filly. Super impressive the other day. Looks the winner of this race because its biggest danger is the horse in training stablemate, Perfectly Written. Spoke to Shane at length this week. He said, at the moment, the way that Alabama Shakes is closing that gap and has closed that gap, Lauren will take the reins on her, and hence it's our top pick. Also an early tip. They could be looking to return the horse to New Zealand because it's not eligible for the Australian races after this weekend, more or less. Could race in the Science Stakes and be the first of the Australians invited to the Harness Jewels. Now, the Harness Jewels will have one Australian in each division invited. I'm picking Alabama Shakes. If she wins on Saturday night, will beat the Australian 2-year-old filly Rep.
What about the Oaks heats? We see Mark Purden well represented again. We'll see Big Lucy go around and also fight for glory.
I think Big Lucy is a steady filly. She's a good filly. I think she might end up staying in Australia and competing over there because Mark has so many good fillies. The most in form of those is Fight for Glory, outstanding in her last 2 wins. She beat Delightful Lana, who you see in the last heat at Addington 2 starts ago. So Fight for Glory is the best New Zealand chance in the Oaks, and in the heat this week she should be too good. Natural gate speed horse, lots of pluses, no negatives. Natalie Rasmussen to do the driving. The other New Zealand filly is Delightful Lana. In the last heat, again, natural for Australia, but New Zealand trainers are getting smarter about which horses they take to Australia and which ones are suited to that type of racing, Hazy. Gets off the gate hard, has roughed and toughed against older horses. Really hard to see her not running a place at least and probably winning. Even though that heat does have a little bit of depth to it, I think she might be too good for most of these. So Fight for Glory, yes. Delightful Lana in the last, yes. Big Lucy against Delight Me, that'd be a no.
All right, Mick. Well, thank you very much for your insight into the Kiwis, and we look forward to seeing you over here in Australia as the Inter-Dominion, the build-up to the Inter-Dominion keeps on growing.
Thanks, Aggie. Looking forward to not only Saturday night, of course, but the mega Sunday meeting coming up on March 1.
There he is, Mick Guerin, joining us to have a chat about the Kiwis on Saturday night.